Pacific Ioneer really started in 1972. And it was myself at first, and then Joe Garnett joined us, other artists, Drew Struzan came along, Bill Garland, Ingrid Hinke, Carl Ramsey. There was about 5 or 6 of us that were involved with from the full vertical operation of from the concept, design, and finished product. We did it all internally except for photography. And then we had Scott Inyart, who came on as our staff photographer for years, and we did a lot of work together. And but we were mainly a design and illustration company. And so by 1974, and the art department was really smooth. It was running like a well-oiled machine for as different as we all were, and as diverse our talents were, we found a way to utilize all of that. And without being an ego thing, I became that link that joined the concept to the design to all the rest of it. And we became, it's really interesting, we became like one. We thought all on the same level. Everybody was just really, really great as a group. And so that kind of bothered me because it was too smooth. I needed to make sure that we all remembered the value that we brought to start with when we started working together, how it all formulated and became. Drew Struzan was an oil painter. He was a fine artist. He wasn't a commercial illustrator, but he learned how to do that. And we all learned together. And so we learned so well that it was almost too good, as crazy as that may sound. So what I decided,
I feel a challenge is coming to to the team of Pacific Ioneer from Ernie Cefalu. I've got to hear about this.
it was like I said, it was a little too smooth, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't lose our own individuality for the sake of the group. We were solving problems. And when we had a issue, when we had a presentation to make, we would do like 10 different sketches, and each one was like better than most people's finished art. These guys were illustrators. They were amazing. So, some of these sketches that I have, and there's probably close to 1,000 of them from all of us differently, but they were, and then it got to the point where I would have more, but the clients started taking them. The clients wanted them, even the ones that they didn't buy. We'd show them 6 different things, they'd buy one, and they wanted all the sketches. And I'd have to take them back and get Drew to sign them or Bill to sign them. They wanted them signed, and now those sketches, especially Drew's, are worth a lot of money, so it's and we gave away art too, especially when it came to the corporate world. I mean, part of the reason why I think they loved using us was because they ended up with a final piece of art that they could frame and put on their wall. But we also gave them good work that the other agencies just couldn't deliver on. So I wanted to make sure that we kept that individual personal thing strong. So what I decided to do was to create a project inside the art department. And it wasn't for any commercial client or music client. It was kind of like a personal challenge. So the problem, the boundaries were, I wanted them to do something outside of the company. I didn't want any of us to be influencing the other. It was something that you're going to do. You're going to take it. You're going to create something that's outside of your comfort level. Okay, Drew Struzan was an incredible painter, illustrator. He needed to do something else. Bill Garland was a great cartoonist. He needed to do something else. Carl Ramsey was a great airbrush artist, but he needed to do something else. I was a graphic designer. I worked with tight tools, compasses, and India ink and stuff, and everything. You saw some of the lettering and stuff that I did. I mean, it was all very precise, and I needed to do something in a different medium. So you needed to do it using materials that you found. You couldn't go out and buy, if you're going to do a painting, you can't go out to the art store and buy a stretched canvas. You had to do it yourself. This was where I'm at a trade show, NAMM show, And I've got the actual line art I did in 1971. Here's the sketches I did for that final line art. And there's the mechanical. And what I wanted to do was, and I've got the image where I actually put the painting in front, I mean, the artwork that I'm holding in front of the painting. So anyway, right now it's okay, but I'll send you the correct one when I send you the images. But basically what we have here is, okay, there's the logo I did in 1971. I needed to do something outside of my comfort zone, which is tight little mechanical drawings and stuff. So I decided that I was going to do a painting. And what I did was I painted the Rolling Stones time. This is 1974. This is 2 years, more than 2 years later after doing the art that you see that I'm holding on the left there. And so what I did was I had a painter's canvas that I used when I painted walls and interiors because I had a fourplex and I was constantly being the super there, painting walls and things. And so I took that canvas and I cut out a piece. I had some wood. I made a frame, stretched the canvas on it, and I did that painting of the tongue. And it's signed and all that's it, 1974. And so when we went back we had 1 week to each one of us do something and come back. And so I did this, I think Drew did a sculpture. Okay, he had never done a sculpture before. And then right after we did this, interesting enough, right after we did this project here, not long after, we got the Kenny Rankin Silver Morning album, which was a wood carving that Drew did for that album cover. And I think we had talked about it in one of our shows. Yeah, the beautiful cover that Drew did, and sculpture. And so, it was very easy for him to go from that project that we had done internally to doing this sculpture, for Kenny Rankin's album. So, I mean, there were kind of things like that happened like that. Carl Ramsey who was an airbrush artist, did a landscape painting. Okay, he later on, years later, he became well known for his landscapes as a painter, as a fine artist. And he sort of hung up the airbrush, which was really weird because he taught Drew how to use an airbrush. And because Drew had only used paint and colored pencils, he had never used an airbrush. So Carl taught him how to use the airbrush. He taught Carl how to draw figures better, as he did with Bill Garland. Bill taught Drew how to do cartooning. Okay, and we have that Flying Tiger air freight piece, that 23 frames that Drew did, all in that Jack Davis style. I mean, unbelievable stuff, how we all influenced each other. And I sort of, my thing became, and always was, the concept, but I became even stronger with the lettering and working with each one of these guys as a co-author of the piece that we did, and it was really kind of pretty amazing. And again, like I said, I didn't want us to get too hung up as a group, because then, you kind of lose your identity to this group. And that's why each one of those artists and photographers were given credit for everything that they did on every album cover. That was really important, So I did this painting, okay, and then we sort of put everything away and moved on with the work we were doing. And when 2.5 years ago, and so, I took it and put it away. When I put it away, I had 4 garages. I had a big apartment with under the bed and in the closets. I mean, I was just doing stuff and putting it away. And so I remember putting it away in one of the garages with all the other stuff. I had shelves and just stuff stacked on top, of everything. And by this time, we had gotten rid of all the production stuff, all the mechanicals and stuff. I told you, I filled 3 dumpsters with all the mechanicals that were predecessor to the finished package. So every album cover we did, we had to do a mechanical for. I had all those mechanicals. When we moved from our office to the fourplex, we had no room. So I had to throw it all away. It's crazy. There was no, eBay or, any of those, so but I kept the art. I kept a lot of the art. And so, when we moved out of the fourplex 2.5 years ago, I first had a chance for the first time ever to really organize everything. So I did a kind of a rough organization of everything that we then packed up and shipped to the desert, where I rented this 60 by 80 space, and we just moved everything in there because it's like 50 years worth of stuff. You know, we just couldn't throw everything away immediately. And we had to get, you know, we had sold the fourplex, so we needed to start doing stuff. And all these garages were just filled. I mean, it was crazy. And so we rented the space, and I moved everything here. And I kind of took a rough edit of stuff as it was leaving LA to come to the desert. And I didn't remember seeing that piece. I mean, I'm pretty good about, you know, it's like Ma Kettle. You know, she had all those kids, but sometimes she couldn't remember the names, but she recognized the face. And if they weren't in there at the supper time, she knew, you know, that they were missing. So I kind of was looking for it, but there was so much stuff. It was like an avalanche of stuff that we had to move, and we had a couple of months to do it, but it's a lot of stuff. And then there's the personal stuff as well, the furniture, you know, whatever we're doing. We had a full house of furniture here in the desert already.
I'm thinking of Fibber McGee and Molly's closet.
Yeah, the closet, Fibber McGee's closet. Right. Yeah, that's exactly what each one of those garages was. And I found pieces. I mean, I found pieces that I had thought I lost. And we found pieces under beds and behind, you know, a big dresser. There was a flying tiger piece that Drew did that was beautiful that I had thought. So I didn't remember seeing this piece. But I was so inundated with everything else plus work and moving, you know, I just sort of moved everything here and figured I'd get it. So now we're here. I'm spending 8 months going through each one of these boxes that we filled and wrapped and stuff. And it filled this 40 by 60 space. I mean, it was crazy. So we had to systematically go through every folder, every box. And I cataloged it for the first time ever. I cataloged everything. So that when I moved it, and while we were doing that, I was building a 20 by 30 foot space in our backyard. We took half our backyard and built this 20 by 30 climate controlled space that we put all this artwork in. And so what I did was I cataloged everything again now. So now I've gone through everything and I've moved everything over here. But I still didn't see that piece. I didn't know what had happened to it. Again, there's so many, there were thousands of pieces. And, you know, it wasn't just the original artwork. It was sketches and comps and all this printed stuff. And when we'd go out to a press check, I'd pull 2 or 3 sheets off the press and take them back to the office, roll them up and put them away. So I've got all these press proofs from these different album covers that we went out on press checks for, you know, and that's all part of what we're talking about, this online gallery that's going to happen beginning of next year, I hope. So anyway, I still haven't found it. It's pretty much out of my mind by now. And now it's like a year and a half, 2 years later, right? And I haven't thought about that piece in a long time. And so I was looking for, this is weird, I was looking for an album cover that we were going to be talking, I think it was Delaney and Bonnie. I was looking for some stuff that we could put up on the background here for that album. We talked about it. And there was this wooden box. It was about, I don't know, 10 inches wide. It was 30 by 40. It was plywood, and it was a box. And I had gotten it because there was a guy who wanted to sell my prints. So he bought a bunch of prints from me, and he was going to sell them. We had a deal. And so he did. He sold a bunch of them, and then there were some that he didn't sell. So he decided that he was going to get out of that business. And he had a site called Pop Rock Gallery, and now he has a newsletter that comes out all about album cover art and museum shows and all that stuff. A guy named Mike Goldstein, and so early on, before he had that, he had interviewed me for his Pop Rock Gallery series. And we became good friends, and he bought these prints and he sold some, and then he decided that he was going to change businesses. So he asked me if I wanted the prints back. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll buy them. He goes, no, I'll give them to you. So he built this box and he put the prints in them and he sent them to me. So I remember looking at them and I put it away. And then when we moved everything over here into the space, we cataloged it as a wooden box. I figured I knew what was in it.
Pandora's box.
Yeah, exactly. Pandora's box, right? You know,
yeah.
and because I figured, well, you know, there's the box that the prints came in. I've got all this other stuff that I'm inventorying and trying to move over there in different trips. And so it's the wooden box that's got the prints in it. So I'm looking for the Delaney and Bonnie stuff. And I'm looking around and I find it and I'm sitting there looking at all the stuff and I see that box. And I wonder, maybe there's some prints in there. Maybe I should get those out. Maybe I'll sell them. So I pull the box down, I open it up, and there was that painting inside.
Wow.
The painting that I had lost since 1974. I put it away in 74. Don't ever remember seeing it again. And what happened was when we moved everything over here, I had a couple of neighbors that helped me pack stuff up and put things in, wrap stuff up. And one of them had taken that piece and put it inside the box. And I was doing something else. I was making a run, I guess, to the Goodwill because I had stacks of albums, hundreds of albums that I had no place to put them. So I gave them to Goodwill and a few of these other places that would resell them. And so I was making a run, and I didn't know that they had put that away in that box. So there it was. There, I open it up, and holy Toledo, there it is. So it's just something, and this is kind of an exclusive for our neighbors on the block party here who are Stones fans. That this painting has never been seen before. It's been put away. It was done in 1974, in April actually of 74. I put it away. And it just a month or two ago, when we were talking about Delaney and Bonnie, I found it again. So I thought, wow, this would really be a great, thing to talk about.
And
because
it's so recent too, that you discovered it.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, and I've done a few things like that before, like that Flying Tiger piece and stuff, but nothing like this. This was, and I hadn't really thought about, the whole thing that I created inside with the company and a challenge for each one of us to do something and not do it as a group, but do it individually to make sure that we still could remember who we were and the value that we brought. It was important. It was important that they, just like me, I mean, it was a little bit different for me because I was an owner. Okay. But I was a hands-on owner. I wasn't the kind of owner that just sat back and built stuff and collected money and, somebody else did all the heavy lifting. I was right in there. Pacific Pioneer was that kind of company. We were like a family. I mean, we truly were. And that's why I always made I always make that comparison of us and a rock band. And it's just so ironic that we were in the music business. I mean, if we were probably in the, corporate business, I would have saw us as a young agency in the corporate world, because I had a foot in that as well. So, it was kind of different for me. But again, I thought that this was really a really interesting thing because it has been lost for all these years, and there it is.
It's beautiful. I like it.
Yeah, and I'll send you the image. You see it close, and it's got all these paint stains and stuff. When I would throw it down and paint a wall, and there's just stains on it. But I didn't, you couldn't go out and buy canvas, so I had that dropped off, and I cut that, and it's good size. It's like, I don't know, 25.5 by 30 or something. It's not small. And that was the other thing. I'm very comfortable with small stuff, little things that I can use ruling pens and rapidographs and India ink, and usually everything in black and white. People all the time, they'll see these pieces that, that I'm holding there in that shot. And then the finished piece, that color piece down there at the bottom, is a mechanical. That's a ruby lith overlay over a piece of black and white line art. Most of the stuff that I did in black and white and tight like that. We talked about it last week with fogging, that where it was, I lettered. There were a few times that I did that. There was a Canned Heat, One More River to Cross album that I lettered right on the artwork. So I was on that Canned Heat piece, I was able to letter right on Drew's art. And, illustrators really funny. I mean, painters especially, they don't like other people working on their stuff. I mean, we talked about that before. Drew had only done it 2 or 3 pieces, collaborating with other artists, but never the way he collaborated with me, because I actually went right on his artwork and did my artwork on top of his. Same thing, with the Foghat album. I went in there and lettered it in green. And then Carl came in with the airbrush and fuzzied it all up and made it look electric, so it was really funny because we were really, like I said, we were really clicking as a team, and they always say there's no I in team and stuff, but there has to be, because each one of you has to remember the value that you bring, because nothing ever lasts forever. as much as we all loved each other, and there was a point when we did. And you look at a lot of rock bands, the same thing. They all love each other. They're blood brothers. They'll take a bullet for each other. But then, the commerciality comes in, and the money, and who's the lead guy, and there's all this jealousy, and then other people get involved, and it just goes crazy. The same thing happens, in business, and it certainly did in our little family. I mean, even though we went our separate ways at a certain point, each one of them came to me and said, look, I'm not coming to you and this was Bill Garland, Drew Struzan, and Carl Ramsey. All three of them came at different times and said, Tony Seiniger has offered us more in a set of sketches that we do for a movie poster than you pay us for the whole week. So, and we're not coming to you to say, and they all said the same thing, basically, we're not wanting you to try and match what we're doing. We just need to move on. And this is, it'll be good for everybody. And at the moment, it was the worst thing that I ever experienced, because all of a sudden, the unity is gone. The strength is gone. It's like being a superhero and having your powers taken away. And now it's all up to you to sort of try and figure out, what do I do now? I mean, now it's all back on me, and yeah, there were other people that came along, really great people, Rick Lynch, Kevin Spinney. There were several good art, David Coleman, that came along after this group, but it was never the same. And the same thing happens with rock bands. Even though Journey got a singer that sounds just like, Steve Perry, it's not the same. It's not the magic. It's not the magic of those guys and the interaction. And the same held true at Pacific Pioneer. The magic had kind of fleeted, but it was okay because we always had that corporate piece. And we talked about this before, how the corporate world didn't really need illustration. It needed photographs. If they had a product, they wanted a photograph of it. Because it had a reality to it. An illustration, well, that's a little shaky. It could be real. It could just be a future concept that somebody's trying to raise money to do or something. It's not real. It needs to be tangible, and so as that music world ended, and well, it didn't never end. It just declined. So did the artists that were at Pacific Pioneer. Pacific Pioneer didn't go out of business. Some companies would do that. They would their key teams that are championship teams go from being the best there is to being down on the thing because the stars left. I mean, it just happened. So they have to rebuild. We were lucky because we never let go of one to hold the other. We always kept a good hold in corporate America, and it was good for each one of us too, because we learned how to be diverse in our thinking. 1 minute we're doing an album cover, the next minute we're doing 13 buses for the RTD, then we're doing a project for Rockwell International and stuff. So it was really varied as each week, and it's what kept us looking forward. And that was one of the other things, because it was like we couldn't wait to get to work. It's great when you can't wait to get to work.
That's great.
Yeah. I know you have that same team thing, and for years, and then it changes, and it's not the same. And you find your own strength, though, and I'm sure you'll agree with that.
Very much so. Ernie, let me ask you this: in that painting, it's just so striking. You have any plans for that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm talking about a museum show nearby in another museum, and I'm waiting to hear back from them. And I've got a beautiful frame that I redid. It was all damaged, and I made molds and casts and stuff. And it's this real ornate frame that I'm going to put it in. I was also thinking about selling it. I'm this online gallery that I've been talking about is going to be something very unique. Nobody has ever done it because they don't have the content and they don't have the variety. I mean, I know, artists that have done stuff for, I know the guy that did all the costumes for Prince, and he did his album covers, but it's the only artist he ever did anything for. It's like having a one-trick pony. Once you've seen the trick, no need to come back and see it again. I have so much stuff, thousands of things, and this will probably be one of them. Along with because there'll be things that start at $250 and go all the way up to 150,000. So I mean, it's that's I want to show it. I'd love to show it because it's so eclectic the way it all came together and all the stains and stuff. It's not pristine, but it's like I only did two other paintings before this one. One was a 6-foot artichoke, and the other one was a 6-foot long feather. Because I had this rendering class in college, and I loved it, man. I mean, I did rendered rocks and pieces of wood, and it was just amazing because you focus on the littlest details. And and so I decided to, when I was in college, I would do these big paintings, take these little renderings and make big paintings out of them. So that's the only time I had ever done a painting. Very uncomfortable with painting, and very uncomfortable with not working with tools and working on something large. The biggest thing I've ever worked on was probably, 10 by 12 or something. I mean, it was on illustration board. I mean, this I stretched the canvas. I mean, it's really a neat project. And when you look at it, you'll have the images to look at them closer. It's really great because you can see all the stains and all the imperfections on the canvas.
And I'm so glad you found it and that you have plans for it. Well, my next question is, what song would you like to tie to it? I've got one in my mind, but I want to hear yours.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I can do a Vulcan mind meld with you on your head there to see, if I can come up with it.
Something.
Well, it would have to be from the Sticky Finger album because that was what inspired this whole thing.
Yeah.
And so for me, the Sticky Finger album was always about two songs: Wild Horses and Can't You Hear Me Knocking. Those are the two that either one of those two would work. Which one were you thinking?
They are both excellent. Well, when I had made that comment about Pandora's Box, when you were talking about the box, the association, Jules Alexander had a song called Pandora's Golden Heebie-Jeebies.
Really?
It's one of those great songs. A lot of people didn't know the association.
I don't think I ever heard it.
So I was
thinking, let's do that one. Let's do that one. That's great. I'm all for it.
It's amazing what your art brings up. It's again, like we've talked about, we'll look at a certain piece like the Stone's Tongue logo. It brings back a lot of memories, and then it connects other conversations.
Sure. Yeah. No, it was probably one of the, at the time I did it, I wasn't really a big Stones fan. I was a Beatles fan, in the Canyon bands, and a lot of the Northern California, because going to college in Oakland, I think I told you, Country Joe McDonald and the Fish would perform on our campus every Friday afternoon because the drummer was living with one of the girls that we were in college with. And it was a small college, 125 people full time, or not, about 90 people full time. So it was like a little family. And so those northern bands, San Francisco and LA, those in Southern California, those were the ones that I really liked. And the Stones were good, but I was always a Beatles fan, and so for me, doing the Stones song wasn't that big a thing. It was neat because it's the Rolling Stones, and I always liked them. But if you asked me to choose between them and some other band, it would be the Beatles, no question. And then maybe the Doors and some of those bands, Quicksilver Messenger Service. Some of those bands, Country Joe McDonald and the Fish. There were a lot of crazy bands. Richie Havens. We did an album for Richie. It's so funny because I remember.
Wow.
Huh?
I love Richie and just the history.
Let me tell you, he was the nicest guy. I met him. It's so funny. I met him on the UC Berkeley. The UC Berkeley campus was about a mile from our school. So we would always go down there and hang out and stuff. And Richie was a musician that was just there playing music. I mean, he didn't have a crowd around him or anything. He was just, and this is like 1964, 65, and there were a lot of musicians. And and mimes and you name it, they were all out there by the Berkeley campus, and then all the peace movement and stopping the war in Vietnam and all that stuff happened. And Huey Newton and those kind of Angela Davis and I had a really good friend that was running guns for the Black Panthers. I mean, it was a crazy time when Eldridge Cleaver. There was a time when Eldridge Cleaver somehow eluded the police, and they were looking for him. And the Jelly Roll Press, remember them? They
Yeah.
printed up these Eldridge Cleaver masks and gave them out to everybody. So everybody was wearing these paper Eldridge Cleaver masks, and they're getting all these phone calls. It was just, I mean, it was a crazy time. I can remember walking into the camp near the campus, and the National Guard had everything chicken wired out, and they're there with guns and stuff. I mean, that was the People's Park move march and stuff. I mean, we participated in a lot of that. So my heart was really with that kind of music, and to me, the Beatles were very influential in my school, my art, my life. So they were really the ones. But it isn't to say that I didn't like the Rolling Stones.